Hello, my name is Chris Alvarez. I'm here to talk about strategic issues of 2020, ethics issues. When we're looking at 2020 and the ethics issues that have come up, one of the biggest issues has been the police use of force. Issues such as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, these have become household names on ethics issues where people were harmed. When trying to solve these, we're talking about strategic changes that need to be made. This is to protect both citizens and law enforcement. This has to be done at the organizational level. It also has to be done at a higher level. There are several options to make these interactions between police and citizens more ethical and more safe. To help out with this issue, I want to look at specific cases that have popped up in the news. First and foremost is the case of Breonna Taylor, and I want to bring up a related issue from back in 2013 of Jose Guerrera. Both of these are uniformed personnel, law-abiding citizens that were subjected to no-knock raids. In Taylor's case, it was her boyfriend that responded to a break-in with a firearm. Jose Guerrera, being a former Marine himself, grabbed his weapon and prepared to protect his home from invaders. And it turns out, well, these invaders were uniformed police personnel that did not announce themselves properly, opened fire, and not only killed citizens in their home that were law-abiding and did not commit any crimes, but they actually put the neighborhood at risk. And the only person charged in the Breonna Taylor case was the person that fired so wantonly that they put the neighbors at risk. A similar case of a law-abiding citizen being harmed by police officers was Philando Castile. He was a law-abiding concealed carry permit holder. And something that has actually been brought up a few times is that concealed carry weapons permit holders tend to be statistically more law-abiding than law enforcement officers themselves. So this is where many of these people are law-abiding citizens. This person in particular announced that they had a concealed carry permit and was attempting to show the permit when the police officer unfortunately overreacted and shot the man. I also want to present a contrary issue. In the case of Michael Brown, looking back and when the case came out, the facts have come out that Michael Brown did actually commit a violent crime. He was not armed, which is why his case is controversial and did spark protests. But he committed a violent theft, battered and assaulted the officer, and the officer eventually fired because the person presented a credible threat. However, in the case of Michael Brown, now we have the issue of there's a reason why people were protesting, and it wasn't necessarily because Michael Brown was a good use case, but actually because of the fact that there were so many incidents of police firing at an unarmed civilian that at that point it was a boiling point, and Michael Brown ended up being a bad example, and it was harmful to that community as an example. And it's also harmful to police because now we have the issue of even justified uses of force are coming under not just scrutiny, they should be scrutinized, absolutely. But they also run into the issue of now there's simply bad press. It is now assumed that the police officers are just wrong without hearing out the facts of the case. There are some recommendations out there. I think a very good summary comes from Levinson King from the BBC, and I figured the BBC is a good neutral standpoint that's not going to come at it from necessarily American left or American right politics, but these are some strategic options to consider. I do want to say that some of these are extreme and they need to be tempered, but they should be considered. The first is actually the most reasonable and is the rewriting of use of force policies. there is a issue where sometimes the police attitude that's being trained is, can you use force, not should you use force. And so there have been instances where a police officer was allowed to use force, but probably shouldn't, probably could have de-escalated. These incidents need to be pushed more towards de-escalation if possible, with the use of force always still being there when necessary. One phrase that's being brought out, and this is the second recommendation from Levinson King, was defund the police. This one I am personally opposed to, but to give it credit, the idea should not be that we're not trying to completely dismantle or get rid of a police or a police function, but it is to transition it to probably a better authority, a better source. Not everything is a law enforcement issue. I think that's a worthy cause to think about, is when is it not a law enforcement issue? The other option being thrown out is dismantle the police. Now, once again, we should not remove or get rid of law enforcement, but there is some merit to think about. The police department involved in the George Floyd death, it's not just the agency itself dealing with George Floyd, but actually there was a series of bad things that happened afterwards, where they even assaulted the press. And this is where individual police departments may need to be dismantled and rebuilt. This is something to consider, but I would not take this to an extreme of completely eliminating law enforcement. Another item offered is demilitarize the police. This one I would agree with, in that we need to separate the personnel with fully automatic weapons, tanks, body armor, and such from the personnel that walk around in civilian clothing to perform civil duties. One that's already being done, but it's put out by Levinson King, is sue the police. Absolutely. Anytime you have a question about the use of force, it should be adjudicated. So 100%, please continue to adjudicate all instances of police violence, and especially the use of deadly force. Another option being put out, police the police, with an example being body cameras. Body cameras are a good choice for helping police officers and citizens. It protects both. The only thing is there is a privacy issue, and that just needs to be implemented via policy. There just needs to be better policy with the use of the body cameras and the use of the footage from the body cameras. But in general, it is a good idea and should be used more often. The final recommendation from Levinson King, start counting. Absolutely, we need better statistics, we need better data. We can make decisions based off of that data. As I've said several times, we should not take any of these to an extreme, but one of the things that will inform our decisions and also inform our evaluation afterwards for the communities that attempt these, we need to have the data to say, yes, that worked, no, it didn't, this facet worked, but we can't employ the entire program. We need the data. So to conclude, we absolutely need reforms to our law enforcement so that these interactions between citizens and police are more ethical, they're more safe. The solutions need to be strategically planned. This needs to be planned both by the politicians, mayors, governors, and such, in coordination with their police chiefs and the staff. This needs to be a strategic plan that needs to be actually strategically implemented, with ethics and human rights as a forefront thought. Many of the examples I gave were law-abiding citizens. This is where we need to make sure that the rights of law-abiding citizens are respected, including their Second Amendment rights. These cases of excessive use of force make the police look. It creates a doubt in citizens' mind, and now we've got a problem where citizens do not trust their police, and the police, in that case, also do not trust the citizens. We need to foster trust, and we need to foster ethics between both the community and its law enforcement. Thank you for your time.